How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. And I'm sure our viewers are doing great because we're back here at Water2Wine again.
Indeed we are.
And you are.
Brian.
And I'm Keith.
And this is our friend Derek.
And we are
the
DenverWineGuys.com.
So Derek, tell us a little bit now, when you come to Water2Wine, your facility, how is this going to happen? What are people to expect when they're going to come in and make wine?
Sure. So the first thing they'll do is they'll come into the tasting room up front and
start with a glass of wine, right?
Absolutely. Within 2 minutes of the door, my goal is to have a glass of wine in your hand. So
love this place.
I'm liking it. I
haven't failed that yet. But what we do is we run through a tasting. We find a wine that people enjoy, that their palates are used to, and then they make the wine up front.
So you find out from me if I walked in what it is that I like.
You bet.
Am I the Chardonnay drinker or Cabernet drinker? And once you've nailed it, hey, this guy likes Spanish white wines,
then we'll just start tasting, right? So it's pretty simple. Red or white, dry or sweet, right, to start.
Okay.
And then we'll start going through some different wines and say, well, do you like this? I like it. What don't you like about it? And we'll try and help you determine what your palate enjoys and what it doesn't.
That's really good. I didn't realize you did that.
Most people don't know how to put in words what their palate is doing, right?
Yeah.
So we try and help them through that process. Once they've found the wine that they want to produce, we take them into the mixing room and in about 20 minutes have their wine put together. In about a week, everything comes back here. So these wines here and here are in primary fermentation.
In the white containers.
Right. And we do 6 gallons at a time for our clients because we can control the chemistry a little bit easier.
And 6 gallons will produce how much wine?
Well, it should produce 30 bottles of wine.
If you're not sloppy and the customer's not being sloppy in their bottling.
Well, the truth of the matter is, so 6 gallons, do the math, 750 milliliters, 30 bottles. When we do the rack to clear phase and the filtration phase, we lose about half a bottle. And then when our clients come back to bottle from the last segment, generally speaking, somewhere between the bottling room and the front door, there's a little R&D.
Nice.
Quality control, whatever you want to call it, shrinkage, to the tune of about a bottle. So we guarantee that you'll walk out with 28 bottles.
Well, in primary fermentation, do you not have any spillover, any where it starts to froth over?
We don't. And we seal everything up tight, but we've got a pressure release valve, right, an airlock that allows that carbon dioxide to be blown off. So when you put the juice in the barrel and you pitch the yeast, that yeast converts the sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. If you have a solid lid with no way for that to escape, the gas is going to blow the lid off and it's going to, fall onto the floor like it did in your college dorm.
Well, I was going to say Keith would like this one. When I was a kid, actually junior high, high school, we used to make our own wine, but we didn't have these fancy little airlocks. And I don't know if the viewers can see this, but there's actually
there's one right here.
A piece in the center here. Once fermentation starts happening and the gases are released, it'll start getting the centerpiece to start spinning.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because of the air or the gases that are being released. But we didn't have these when I was in junior high, so we used a balloon. And just put a balloon on there, and you'd watch the balloon. I mean, not in
junior high or college.
Well, my brother was in high school. I was in junior high when we first started making our wines.
And you first built your first still?
Wow, clearly a federal offense. But you're right. In the old days, right, they would put a balloon on there, and the balloon would fill with CO2. And when fermentation is over, the balloon would go flat, and that's when the winemakers would know that fermentation is done.
Yeah.
Here, we use it to blow the gases off, and also to keep fruit flies out. I always tell the gals, you don't want spiders in your wine, so you need to have an airlock on there, otherwise spiders will get in there. And protein's good for you, but it's not very good tasting.
Right.
Well, so tell us a little bit here, because I'm noticing in this particular bottle, we have what is referred to as flocculation. So you've got some yeast in here.
Correct.
Do you at all encourage people to, spin that around or roll it?
No. Basically what we do, primary fermentation in red wines takes place in about 7 days. White wines, it takes about 14 days. And primary fermentation, somewhere, depending on the particular wine, between 80 and 90% of the sugar is consumed at that point. Then the yeast kind of gets tired and lazy, and you need to wake it up. So we take it from primary. This is actually a secondary fermentation here. We rack the wine down into this vessel, and that's where we get the oxygenation, and we get that yeast to move around and wake back up. So the remaining, 15 or 10% of the sugar is consumed here.
Now,
does that answer your question?
Well, I was just wondering, and without trying to get too geeky on this, but the term surly aging. I mean, do you do any of that in here? Okay, which is where you're leaving the juice in contact intentionally with the dormant yeast, but then you're always waking it back up.
Some wineries do that, you're saying?
Yeah, right. Yes, which gives a more creamy mouthfeel.
Is that typical in the winery business?
It's done a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's where the acid change, the malolactic acid conversion, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's what gives it that creamy, buttery texture, like a Kendall Jackson Chardonnay is really known for.
Right. I mean, you can do that, but surly aging can take place at the same time as malolactic fermentation, but not necessarily.
Okay.
They both will aid to that mouthfeel.
Very good. Cool. And what a question I have is, from the first process to the second process, the customer comes back how long after?
The customer doesn't do any of this process. So what we do is the customer gets involved on the front end to put the wine together.
Gotcha.
Then they basically sign it over to us to do all of the dirty work for them.
Okay.
So we do secondary fermentation, we do stabilization, we do the rack to clear, we do the filtration piece.
Okay.
Then they come back to do the finishing.
Tell us a little more about the stabilization here.
So stabilization, depending on the typical wine, you'll go from a wine that has a lot of residual sugar into it through secondary fermentation, where the residual sugar, for the most part, is consumed. At that point, we're looking to put the yeast in a stasis and then rack that yeast off. So in stabilization, we put that yeast in stasis and use a bonding agent, isinglass, to drop all of the lees and the yeast down to the bottom of the barrel.
And again, I just find all this to be too fascinating. Isinglass, doesn't that come from a fish?
It does. It comes from the bladder of blowfish. Yeah. They used to use, back in the day, they used egg whites. Right? The monks back in Italy and in France would use egg whites, and then people started dying. Right?
Well, and a lot of people don't realize this too. Now, keep in mind, nobody does this anymore, right? But
B-Man info time.
Yeah, another tip. In Italy, there were times in wineries that would actually use ox blood.
Really?
They would, so the blood would coagulate, get thick, and then it would eventually settle itself down. So you're taking all the particles, the floaters and whatnot, down to the bottom. But when people, especially in the United States back in the 70s, there was actually a winery that was still doing it. And once the information was released and people realized, oh my God, my wine's made with blood, it killed the brand. I mean, it was not to be seen in the States again. Yeah.
Is that how they make the wine red?
Different